Good morning, students. Welcome back to the session on cost and management accounting. Myself, CA Vibhavathavan. Today, we'll be starting with employee cost. So, the second most important element of cost after material is labor, which we call as employee cost, right? So, let's start the concepts and everything which you need to know in employee cost. So what is the meaning basically for employee cost? Any compensation we pay in monetary or in kind or in any facility which we call as perquisite is known as wages or labor or employee cost. Cost of paying wages to workers is popularly known as labor cost. All right. So we pay wages, we pay salaries, but here we most importantly have to focus on the labor cost. Employee cost is wider term that include wages and salary and bonus, incentives, etc. paid to an employee and charged to a cost object as labor cost. So it does not only include the basic salary or the basic wages, but everything which the employee receives from an organization or a worker receives from an organization, everything is part of the labor cost or the employee cost. All right. So basically what exactly it covers: benefits paid or payable to the employees of an entity. Entity means an organization or a company, whether permanent or temporary. So certain employees are permanent employees, are on the permanent payroll of an organization, and certain are on a temporary basis or contractual basis. Employee cost includes payments made in cash or kind. So everything and in kind, we calculate the value of it, and then it's basically charged to the employee cost. So it includes wages and salaries, allowances and incentives. Allowances are basically which are regularly paid to an employee, and incentives depending upon category of employees. Payment for overtime. So overtime is a very important factor which we will be going to study in employee cost. Employers' contribution to provident fund and other welfare funds. So basically, the employer contribution is part of the employee cost, the labor cost. All right. Provident fund is a retirement benefit in which every the employee contributes to the provident fund, and when the employee gets retired or leaves the organization, then basically it is transferred to his account. Other benefits: leave with pay, free fee, or subsidized food, LTC, etc. There are many perquisites and incentives which are available to an employee apart from the basic salary and the bonus or the commission, etc. So there are direct labor cost and indirect labor cost. Direct labor cost is paid to direct employees, and indirect labor cost is paid to employees who basically work not directly on the production, but yes, they facilitate the production and for every other work in the organization. So direct employee cost is the cost incurred in payment of employees who are directly engaged in the production process, who actually work in the manufacturing process, the production process, who actually work on the product, on the job. All right. Direct employee cost can easily be identified and allocated to cost unit. So we have discussed in material also, the same way there is direct material, direct labor cost, we can directly identify, it's directly attributable, it's directly allocated. So direct cost is always allocated. Direct employee cost varies with the volume of production and has positive relationship with the volume. Volume means the output. So whatever output we are going to produce, every single additional output, unit of output we produce, there will be an incremental direct cost. Incremental means there will be an equal proportion of increase in the direct cost. Whereas when we talk about indirect employee cost, it is cost incurred for the employee who are not directly engaged on production, who are not directly working on the product or on the job. Indirect employee cost is apportioned on some suitable or appropriate basis. So direct cost is always allocated and indirect cost is always apportioned, all right, on some basis. So every department or every product or every job, they share the indirect cost, which we call as overheads. By now, you must be familiar with the word overheads. Overheads are generally associated with indirect cost, all right. Indirect employee cost may not vary with the volume of production. So indirect cost, because it does not vary in direct proportion with the output, but direct cost varies in direct proportion with the output. All right. So that is a thing to remember. Moving further, labor cost control or employee cost control, it is as important as cost ascertainment. It's as important as cost computation. We calculate the total labor cost. So this is very, very important fundamental of employee cost. And on the other hand, to control that labor cost is also a second most important objective of the labor cost. So employee cost control means control over the cost incurred on employees. Control over employee cost does not imply control over the size of the wage bill or the wages of each employee should be kept as low as possible. It is not exactly that. It is the main objective of employee cost control is to reduce the cost per unit of labor. All right. So the aim should be to keep the wages per unit of output for production as low as possible. So it's not that we should pay the minimum to the employees. This is not cost control. All right. And this is not cost control that, okay, we have to control the overall size of the wage bill, that what are incentives we are paying, we should not pay, or we should pay less incentives, or we should pay less wages or salaries to the employee. It's not about that. It's about per unit cost of the output in respect of wages should be the minimum, right? And this can only be increased by employees' efficiency actually. So if we increase the efficiency of the employees and the workers, so the cost per unit of output will be decreased. And that is the objective of cost control, not that we should pay minimum to the employees or we should pay as low as possible to the employees. It's not about that, all right? So hope you understood this. Organization of labor cost control. So basically, there is a whole spectrum. Whole departments are associated with it, and they contribute towards labor cost control. So it's not the responsibility of a single department or a single activity or a single function. It's the responsibility and a cohesive responsibility of all the departments which are involved in basically the computation of the labor cost. So the objectives of proper control on labor cost is effectively achieved through functions of various departments which are responsible. Now let us just quickly understand what are these departments. Personnel department, which we also call as HR department. Engineering and work study department. This is more of a technical department. Timekeeping department. For as the name suggests, it basically records the time of the workers and the employees. Payroll department. Cost accounting department. All right. So let's understand what exactly they are. So personnel department, on receipt of employee requisition from various departments, it searches for the required skills and qualification. See, so personnel department, the HR department, whenever the organization requires an employee, all right. So they send a requisition to the personnel department that we want this employee for this particular job. So when the employee requisition means request. So whenever we have to hire a person for a particular job, first of all, the HR department or the personnel department will see what are the required skills and qualifications that are required for a particular job for which we are looking for a person for, right? And then we ensure that whatever persons we have recruited, that means we have appointed, they should possess those skills and qualifications. So that is the basic role and a very important role of the personnel department, that whosoever we are recruiting, the person should have the required skill and the qualification to do that particular job. And basically it should fit in that purpose and fit in that role. So then let us say there is the person has been recruited, then personnel department arranges for proper training for the newly recruited employees. And of course, the workshops are there for existing employees. So basically for coordinating and organizing training and development programs, the department has a much role to play there. Maintains all personal and job related records of the employees. So personnel department has every record of every employee, all right? The date of joining, the name, the history, the background, every sort of characteristic. It's a full record of the employee that personnel department keeps. Then evaluation of performance from time to time. So see, from recruitment till selection, then training, then development, then performance appraisal. So personnel department has an important role to play during the tenure of any employee or a worker, from the day the person joins the organization, during his tenure, and when he leaves the organization. So every record, everything, the personnel department has a record of every employee. All right. Moving further, engineering and work study department, it basically focuses on the technical aspects of a job, job means any particular operation or a cost object which we are referring to. So it prepares plans and specifications for each job. All right. So engineering and work study department monitors and measures and minutely records every activity of a job requirement. Right. This job is not the job which an employee is doing a job. It is not in that sense. Job means whatever a job order we have received or whatever job order is there, every detail of that particular job. Job means that work, that a particular work has to be charted out. That is a job. Providing training and guidance to the employees, supervises production activities, conducts time and motion studies, undertakes job analysis, conducts job evaluation. Now, these terms are very important when we basically talk about engineering and work study department. So since I said it's a technical department, now what they actually do, for every job, they prepare an analysis. So job analysis is basically the complete job requirement or specification. That means what methods and techniques are required for a particular job, and what is to be performed and how the job is to be performed. And then basically the job description and the job specification. So the whole complete job analysis is done by this department. What are the methods and techniques, how it is to be performed, what skills and qualifications are required by a person to perform this job. So all these detailed analysis of a particular job, this is the purpose of engineering and work study department, and accordingly they basically chart out that this type of training and guidance is required for the employee who will carry out that particular job. All right. So it is focused on the job rather than more on the employee. It's more on the job. So they monitor and measure everything that is related to the job. And job evaluation is basically what is the rating of that job? What is the importance of that job in relation to other jobs? So let us say there are 6 jobs which are to be done in one department. So what is the importance of a particular job in relation to other jobs? What is the significance of that job? What is the utility of that job for the organization? Why is it important? It is important because to keep the wage rate accordingly. So as per, let us say the most important job will be 100 per hour. So anybody who's doing the job who has got the highest rating or the highest importance in an organization, for that job a person will be paid 100 per hour. All right. And then the second important job will be paid 80 rupees per hour. So according to the importance of the job in an organization, the wage rate or the salary rate is to be decided. That is the importance of job evaluation. So we evaluate the job as per its importance to an organization, as per its utility to an organization. And job analysis, I explained you, is a detailed description and specification of a particular job, that what is to be done and how it is to be done, and what all persons will be required, what all technical qualifications or skills will be required for conducting or performing that job. And apart from that, every training, what exactly training is required, that is charted out here. And time and motion study. Yes, and time and motion study, time means how much exactly the time is to be taken to perform a particular job. So every movement of that job, and from the starting till the end, all the time, the total time required to perform a job is a time study. So again, this department performs a time study. Motion study means what exactly a job or a product passes through. Every activity is monitored and measured. Let us say a person will insert the input, and then the machine will do the processing, and then the third stage will be a foreman will collect the semi-finished good, and then he will pass on to the next machine. So every movement, every activity done on that particular job is monitored and measured, so that it's all, everything is basically towards cost control. So that, if we are doing a time study, the objective is to minimize the time which is required to do a particular job. That means, let us say there is any abnormal idle time or there is any abnormal loss. So everything has to be monitored so that the abnormalities should be minimized, all right, and removed. Motion study again. So what, any movement that is not required or that could be avoided, so that will be taken out of the process. So very, very minutely, every movement and every time is being monitored. That is time and motion study. So I hope you got an idea on this. Timekeeping department, payroll department, and cost accounting department. Timekeeping department, as the name suggests, it is concerned with maintenance of attendance records. So timekeeping department again has two variants: timekeeping and time bookkeeping. All right, time booking and timekeeping. So timekeeping department says, okay, this is the time the worker or the employee has entered the organization or the factory gate, and the time at which the person leaves the organization in the evening or after the work gets over. So entry and exit time, basically, that is timekeeping. So keeping the attendance records. Time booking is basically what exactly the employee has done during the day, where he has passed his time. On this particular job, how much time he has spent; on another job, how much time he has spent; in a particular department, how much time he has spent. So timekeeping records the entry and exit, but time booking basically records his movement and what time he has taken in performing the various jobs during that day. All right. Payroll department, first, payroll department is basically prepares the payroll of the employees and disperses the salary. So they make the pay slip of the employee. So the gross salary, the deductions and everything, the payroll department. Cost accounting department, they calculate the final amount to be paid to the employee or a worker. And of course, they also calculate the total labor cost here, and they also give all the statutory deductions and whatever has to be deposited to the government or the statutory bodies. So every cost accounting department has that role to play. Right. So these are the basically departments. Factors for control of labor cost. Before I proceed, let me just go through any queries. All right. Good morning, students, all of you. All right. Yes, direct cost is the labor cost, is the variable cost. Direct cost is always the variable cost. It changes with the level of output or production. Difference between allocated and apportioned. See, direct cost is always allocated. Indirect cost is always apportioned. Allocated means I know exactly how much cost to be attributable to product A, to product B, to product C. Indirect is, for example, electricity. I cannot measure exactly how much electricity has been consumed on product A or product B. Can we measure that? We cannot. So electricity bill has to be apportioned. That means shared between different products. But if certain, let us say a person has actually worked on the product, whatever I'm paying to that person can be directly allocated to that product because that person has actually worked on the product. So direct cost can be exactly attributable to the product or a job. Indirect cost, we cannot measure exactly that how much that cost has been incurred on a particular product or a job. That's why, but there are many products or many jobs or many departments. Indirect cost, that means overheads are always shared between all the products or the departments, and that sharing we call as apportioned. So they will share that cost, all the departments. So indirect cost is always apportioned and direct cost is always allocated. That means it's directly attributable to a product, right? Okay. Engineering and work study department, human resource department, no, they are work study department and human resource department, both are not the same. Human resource department is more of personnel department, and engineering department is more of a technical department. It works on the job. What are the technical aspects of the job? What are technical requirements of the job? All right. So let us proceed. Factors for control of employee cost. The main points which need consideration for control cost are assessment of manpower requirements, control over timekeeping and time booking, time and motion study, as I just explained. So time study is where we record the time taken to perform a job. Motion studies, we monitor and measure every activity which is done on the job. All right. Control over idle time and overtime will be understanding in the in this session. Control over employee turnover. Employee turnover means there should be control on the number of employees and they leave the organization. So employee turnover means why they leave the organization. They should also be control on that. Wage and incentive schemes, of course, it's a part of the employee cost you'll be studying. Job evaluation and merit rating, I just explained. Employee productivity. So all these things are basically factors for the control of employee cost. Moving further, attendance and payroll procedures. So it is one of the very important aspects for a labor or an employee or a worker. So attendance and payroll procedure starts with timekeeping and time booking. See, whenever we have to calculate the wages or the salary of a person, we need to know how much time the person or employee or the worker has spent in the organization or on the job. All right. So time, what is the time and how many days, whether it's a weekly or a monthly or a daily time, whatever is the time frame set for a particular employee or a worker accordingly. So the time into the rate, that will make the total wages or the total salary of an employee or a worker. So timekeeping records each worker's time of coming in and going out of the factory. All right. During engagement of the factory, it is essential for the purpose of attendance and determination of wage payable. So it is very important that you have to record the time when the worker is entering and when the worker is making an exit from the organization. So entry time and exit time, as simple as that. That is the timekeeping. So objectives of timekeeping, it is important to prepare the payroll or the pay slip. At what rate? We know the rate to be paid to the employee, but how much is to be paid? How much days or weeks or months he has actually, or the hours. Sometimes the worker is paid per hour. So how many hours he has worked, how many weeks he has worked. Accordingly, whatever the time frame set for that worker or employee, accordingly we calculate the time he has spent in the organization during that work or a week or a day or a month. Then what are the methods to record the timekeeping? Manual method and mechanical method. Manual method, I hope all of you must be knowing. Attendance register. So the manual attendance registers are kept, which of course is a scope of manipulation and proxy attendance and everything. So attendance register, of course, the employee is coming and signing his entry time and exit time and but he can even sign, on the for yesterday's attendance, he has come today and then he has signed. So a lot of manipulations are there, scope of manipulations. There is an attendance register manual, but it's an age-old method. So in small organizations, still sometimes, attendance register is being used. Token or disk method. So every employee or worker carries a token. And when he enters the organization or the factory, he will hand over his token, which has his number, unique number. He will hand over the token to the basically timekeeper, and the timekeeper will record his time of entering the factory gate against his token number. So his identity is the token number, and when he leaves the organization, he takes that token. So again, there's a scope of manipulation, and the timekeeper can manipulate his entry time and exit time. Mechanical methods are most popularly used in these days. So punch card. Punch card means every employee or worker has a punch card, has a card which the information is in a digital form. All right. So the employee either has to insert the card into the punching machine, or it can just, place the card on the punching machine and it reads the data of the employee. So yes, manipulation can be controlled to a greater extent, but here also there can be, some manipulation. Let us say a person A has taken the the card of person B and marked his attendance, because anybody can take the card. If I have the possession of the card of any other employee, I can mark his attendance. I can insert the card in the punching machine. So to a certain extent, it has control, to the extent that, okay, I cannot mark any employee's attendance for yesterday. All right. So to that extent, it has control because it is in a digital form, and you cannot mark the previous or yesterday's attendance. Biometric is a very, very good system of attendance marking with least manipulation. So in biometric, you have to be there to actually mark your attendance. It will read your physical characteristics, maybe a fingerprint or your face reading or your retina, the retina of your eye. So you cannot carry the face of any other employee or your friend and mark its attendance. So biometric is a very, very good system of attendance with least manipulation. But yes, it carries a cost. So small organizations mostly use the punching card or the attendance register. Large organizations have used biometric now. So in many organizations, if you must be aware of, we use the biometric attendance. All right. I'll just have a look at the queries, if any. Yes, indirect cost, not exactly the total fixed cost. It can be a basically mixture of fixed and variable, but direct cost is always variable. That is correct. Yes, we will be taking the numerical part. Don't worry. Timekeeping and time bookkeeping. All right. Timekeeping basically takes care of the entry and exit time of an employee or a worker. Just entry and exit time. What exactly he's doing in the organization, that is not clear in timekeeping. Like we will be just understanding here. Time booking is, it refers recording the time of each worker for each department. See, I'm entering the organization, I'm leaving the organization. At what time I'm entering, at what time I'm leaving. That is the role of timekeeping. But time booking means that what exactly, how I've spent the time during the day. I've entered the organization at 9 a.m. I have left the organization at 6 p.m. What exactly I have done during the day, where I have spent my these 8 or 9 hours, where exactly how I have spent. So that is the record which time booking keeps the record of that employee. All right. So let us say I've spent 2 hours on product A, I've spent 3 hours on job B, I've spent 2 hours in department A. So time booking actually records where I have spent my whole day. So it is a more detailed, my performance will be evaluated where I have spent the time. So if, let us say, it will monitor how much idle time I have spent, or how much time I was idle during the day, and how much I've actually performed or I've actually contributed to the production or to the operations, right? So time booking is a major parameter which tells what is the performance of an employee, how I'm spending the day in an organization. Clear? So it refers the recording of the time of each worker for each department, operation, process, or job. So where actually I have spent the time. It is useful for the purpose of cost analysis, cost computation, measuring efficiency, and cost control. So this is also very important. If, let us say, I have to be paid per hour, or I have to calculate the cost of a job. So I have to measure, the department has to measure how many hours a worker has spent on a particular job, and how much hours the job requires to complete its production. All right. So time booking details are very important to actually calculate the employee cost, and of course, cost control also. Right. So to ascertain the cost of each project, so computation of cost is we get very important time details from the timekeeping department. Cost of idle time. So we ascertain the cost of idle time also. So during a day of 8 or 9 hours, how much the employee has actually worked on the product or a job or a department, and how much time he has actually spent sitting idle. All right. So that is also, we can generate the record and the data from time booking. Apportionment of overhead based on suitable basis. So overheads are always apportioned. Fair suitable wage system, proper utilization of attendance time. So if there is an idle time, the manager of that particular department will counsel the employee or the worker that, see, your idle time is increasing, so you have to reduce your idle time. All right. So methods of time booking, again, we can keep a timesheet, or we can keep a weekly timesheet, or we can keep a job card for that employee. So everywhere the employee is going for a particular job, so his time will be recorded. Okay, employee, let us say employee has worked on job A for 2 hours, job B on 2 hours, and job C on 3 hours. So job card is maintained, and an employee card can also be maintained. So it can be recorded two ways, either employee card or a job card. All right. Employee card will have all the details of his timings, whatever time he has spent on each job. That time card will record his employees details wherever he has performed. Job card will be the amount of time he has spent on that particular job and what all employees have spent time on that particular job. So let us say there are 5 employees who have worked on a particular job. Job card will have details of all the 5 employees and their time spent on that particular job. So job card will basically have all the time spent on that job by all the employees or the workers. An employee card will have the time spent for that particular employee on every jobs. All right. So job card has multiple employees, and employee card will have multiple jobs or product he has worked on. So both ways the record can be kept, employee card or the job card. All right. Moving further for the payroll procedure. So payroll procedure, the pay slips are made by the payroll department, right? Now payroll department, if they are preparing the salary or the wages, what exactly we require for salary or wages? We require the time or the hours, all right, or the number of days the employee has actually been present in the organization, and the rate or the monthly salary or the hourly wage rate or whatever is the rate at which we have to pay. So time into rate. All right. So the timekeeping department will give the time of each employee or the worker to the payroll department, and the personnel department will give the employee details to the payroll department. All right. So from both ways, the information is coming to the payroll department. As you can see, the timekeeping department will give the time details of the employee. The personnel or the HR department will give the rate or the monthly, whatever is the monthly rate of an employee or a worker, or an hourly rate or a weekly rate, whatever the time frame is set for that particular worker or an employee. So HR department will give the list of the employees and the rate at which they have to be paid. All right. And of course, any leaves or whatever is the balance that they have taken. So timekeeping and personnel department together, they will give the information to the payroll department. So payroll department will have all the details necessary to prepare the pay bill. On the basis of that, the payroll department will calculate the pay slip of every employee and worker with the gross wages and the salary. So what is supposed to be paid to the worker, that the payroll department will pay and will generate the pay slip for every employee or the worker. So that will be the total salary and wages. Cost accounting department will basically give all the deductions and whatever deductions are necessary from the salary. Every employer or worker is not paid the full salary. There are some deductions which have to be made, which will be just with understanding in the next slides. So after making all the necessary deductions from the gross salary or wages of an employee, the rest is being paid to the employee as net salary. All right. So timekeeping will give the time. Personnel HR department will give the rate and the list of employees. Payroll department will make the pay slip on the basis of these two information. Payslip will be forwarded to the cost accounting department. Cost accounting department will generate all the deductions and whatever calculations are required to be made. And the net salary will be paid by the accounting department to the employee. All right. So the net salary is paid to the employee, and whatever statutory deductions are required, that will be paid to the statutory bodies or the government, provident fund, etc., etc. All right. So this is the whole procedure and nexus, how the system works for an employee. So these are the type of deductions. Provident fund, I hope you know, this is a retirement benefit. So it's a very general term. Provident fund deduction is to be made from the gross salary of every employee. Employee state insurance scheme, ESI deduction. ESI's deduction is basically for giving the medical benefits and other monetary benefits to the employees, all right, during the tenure of the employee. So ESI is a regular deduction like a provident fund deduction. So tax deduction at source. So in tax is deducted at source. That means tax is deducted and then the net salary is paid to the employee. So the employer only deducts the tax at base only. All right, at source only, and then the net salary is paid to the employee. Professional tax is some organizations, some professionals that the lawyers or the doctors or any professionals, even the chartered accountants. The professional tax is a state tax. All right, and it is deducted in some cases from the salary of an employee. So these are the major deductions which are generally been PF and ESI mostly in every organization that deducts, and TDS has to be deducted, and the net salary is paid to the employee. So there can be voluntary contributions also. So if the minimum contribution to PF is 10%, so the employee wants to have a deduction of 15%. So any voluntary contribution also. And contribution to any benevolent fund. Benevolent fund is basically organized in an organization and set up to help the employees and their families in the moment of crisis. And so such benevolent fund, if any employee wants to contribute in any such benevolent fund, that also deduction is to be made. Any loan the employee must have taken. So again, the loan EMI has to be deducted from his salary. Any advances and dues. So these are the deductions which are generally made by the cost accounting department, and the net salary is being paid to the employee. All right. So moving further, idle time. Idle time, as the name suggests, the time during which no production is carried out, but the employee is being paid. So idle time is the employee is being paid for those number of hours which he has done nothing, no production, no contribution, but he will be paid. So that is the idle time. In other words, is the difference between the time paid and the time booked. So he is paid for full 8 or 9 hours, but he has actually worked for, let us say, 6 hours. He is paid for 9 hours or the 8 hours, but he has actually worked for 6 hours. So idle time is, let us say, 2 or 3 hours. All right. So we have to control that. Some idle time has to be there. Like we have to give lunch break to every employee for, let us say, 30 minutes. We have to give the, rest time in between, let us say, tea break. So these times so has to happen. This idle time has to happen. We have to give the rest time to the employees. But beyond that, if the employee is sitting idle, that is an abnormal time that we have to control. All right. So idle time can be normal and abnormal. Normal idle time has to happen. Again, we can say it's uncontrollable. It has to happen. Abnormal time we have to control. All right. So we'll see what is abnormal, what is normal. The time for which employees are paid, including holidays and paid leaves and rest time and off time. These are the idle time where the employee is doing nothing but still is paid. All right. That exactly is what we have to learn in the idle time. So normal idle time, every labor has to, given a lunch time or the time lost between the factory gate and the place of work. So these are the basically causes where the time can be, the worker is not doing anything. So when the worker has entered the factory gate and going to the place of work, so he's taking 15 minutes to go to his particular department from the factory gate. So again, that will be the idle time. The interval between one job and another. So the time lag, which you have to start the next job, you have completed one job, then you have to go to another job, and then you have to start that job, the time interval between these two jobs. The setting up time for the machine, the employee is ready, but the machine is taking its own time to, get ready or set up or ready to use or put to use. Normal rest time or break or lunch. So these are the times which will generally happen. So normal time is which are inherent in the process, which will happen during the day. So which cannot be controlled in the short run to that person extent. So it is treated as part of cost of production. Clear? So in case of direct labors, an allowance for normal idle time is considered setting of standard hours or standard rate. Indirect workers, it is considered for computation of overhead rate. So we'll understand when we'll do the numerical on this. So always see when we have accounted for the normal material loss. So the good units basically cover the cost of the material. Similarly here, the good hours, the good production hours will cover the cost of the labor. All right. So the idle time will be covered by the good production hours. So normal idle time has to happen, yeah, which cannot be avoided to much extent. Abnormal idle time can be controlled. All right. So we'll see what abnormal idle times can be controlled. Idle time may also rise due to abnormal factors like lack of coordination or power failure or breakdown of machines or non-availability of raw materials or strikes or lockouts or poor supervision or fire or flood, etc. See, abnormal idle time should not have happened, but it has happened. All right. So there should be efforts to minimize or eliminate abnormal idle time. So there could be two types of abnormal idle time. Abnormal means which don't happen regularly. All right. So controllable and uncontrollable, we can control the controllable abnormal idle time. Let us say there is a poor workmanship or poor supervision or breakdown of machine happened due to negligence of any worker or a manager. So that can be controlled. But if there is uncontrollable, let us say some earthquake has come or there was a power failure or short circuit, that nobody can foresee and nobody can control. So uncontrollable abnormal idle time, it's basically beyond the control of anybody. But yes, the controllable abnormal idle time can be put to focus to control the cost and to minimize or eliminate the controllable abnormal idle time. And whenever it is abnormal, whether it's abnormal cost of material, whatever is abnormal idle time of a labor, it has to go to costing profit or loss account. It will never be absorbed in the employee cost. All right. So controllable refers to that time which could have been put to productive use, but due to certain factors, negligence of the staff, it actually happened. So that can be controlled in future. Uncontrollable breakdown of machines or floods or short circuit or power failure, that we cannot control. That can happen anytime. We cannot foresee that. All right. So that is beyond the control of any management, but controllable, we can focus on. So abnormal idle time is not included as part of production cost, and it's shown as always separately as a costing profit or loss account item. The cost of abnormal idle time should be further categorized into controllable and uncontrollable. Controllable, we should eliminate or minimize. Uncontrollable, we cannot do anything. It's beyond the control of the management also. All right. So we have this first illustration, which will clear the concepts of idle time and what all we have learned so far, how we compute the total employee cost. So it will give you a fair idea about that. Before this, I'll just see if any queries are there. Yes, TDS is always deducted from salary. So the employer only deducts the tax which we have to pay and which is computed from a salary. So the employer calculates the tax and deducts the tax at source only. So we receive the net salary. After deducting the tax, we have to pay on that particular salary. All right. See, regular fund could be any fund which has kept in an organization, but provident fund is a specific retirement benefit fund. All right. So every month we give a deduction and contribution towards provident fund, and it is paid to us when we leave the organization or we retire on superannuation. All right. Yes, normal idle time increases cost per unit. All right. We'll be understanding here, and you will understand it better once we do the numericals. Okay, good. So I'm glad there are whatever have been discussed so far, you have understood. Let's start the numerical on idle time. So just to go through the question, what all is given. Take a note of this question, or you can click a picture so that we will just understand and how it is to be done. Okay. So it's an employee of a company, and it are the whatever we are paying a part of the wages and salary structure and the benefits. So we have the basic pay, we have the DNS allowance, which is generally paid to compensate the cost of inflation. The bonus, other allowances, employer's contribution to PF, 10% of salary and DA. So this is the employer's contribution. X works for 24 hours per annum. out of which 400 hours are non-productive and treated as a normal idle time. So 400 hours are normal idle time. See, the thing which you have to understand here is, students, let me just explain you how it is to be done. See, try to understand. There are basically two variants, all right? One is the earnings. One minute. All right. Okay. So one are the earnings of the worker. All right. And one is the labor cost. So there are two variants which will be asked you to compute in any question. So the things are the different, and how you calculate certain fundamentals are different. Here in this question, you are asked to calculate the hourly cost of employee. Hourly cost of employee means they are asking you to calculate the labor cost. So the how we calculate the earnings and the labor cost, there is a slight variation. So let us say there is basic and there is DA. All right. So this is basic and DA, and here also there is basic and DA. So till here, there is no difference between how we calculate the earnings and how we calculate the labor cost. So basic and DA, this is the total emoluments which the employee is receiving, less employee contribution. So here we take the employee contribution. Many students make this mistake when we calculate the earnings and the labor cost. When we are calculating the earnings, from total earnings, we have to deduct the employee contribution towards PF or ESI. All right. And the net salary is paid. So basic, then DA, less any deduction. So deduction towards contribution will be employee contribution. Here, please don't take employer contribution. This is employee contribution towards PF and ESI. We have to make a deduction, and then the net salary is paid to the employee. This is how we calculate the earnings. But when we are calculating the labor cost or the employee cost means how much exactly we are paying to the labor or the worker or the employee. So here we are paying the basic, we are paying the DA also to the employee, and plus the employer contribution is a part of organization cost. So employer contribution to PF and ESI will be added to calculate the labor cost. So see, there is a difference between the two. When we calculate the earnings given to an employee, his basic, his DA, and everything, bonus, commission, whatever we are paying him will be first added, and then employee contribution towards PF and ESI is deducted from his gross salary, and the net is being paid to him. But when we are calculating labor cost, employer contribution towards PF and ESI will be added to the cost of the whatever we are paying to the employee. All right. So there is a difference between the two. So many times students, they don't exactly know how we calculate the earnings and the labor cost here. So labor cost is what exactly is the total cost which is being incurred by an organization on an employee or a worker. And earnings is what is the amount which the employee or the worker is taking home. So what is the takeaway salary? That is the earnings. So in this question, we have to calculate the hourly cost of employee. Now, cost per hour. Hourly cost means cost per labor hour. You have to calculate. So you have to calculate cost per labor hour. All right. Cost per labor hour. Cost per labor hour. So what we require for it? We require the cost and we require the labor hours. Total labor hours here. So we require two parameters here. Total cost, but total cost means this cost we are referring to, the labor cost we are referring to. We are not referring to the earnings here. So you should understand the difference between the two. Cost per hour means we want the labor cost of an organization. So this is what we require here, not this. So labor cost divided by total effective hours. All right. Total effective hours excluding normal idle time. So cost we'll have to calculate and effective hours we have to calculate, and then we will calculate the cost per labor hour. Clear? So I think the background I need to explain you before we do the numerical on the same, because many students make this mistake between earnings and labor cost. In this question, we have to calculate the labor cost. So now what is the basically the cost? We have the basic pay, 10,000 per month. So 10,000 per month into 12. Clear? So we have calculating the labor cost. This we have to calculate. So basic pay 10,000 per month, that means into 12. DNS allowance 2,000 per month, that means into 12. All right. So please calculate side by side. So basic pay 10,000 per month into 12. DNS allowance 2,000 per month into 12. Bonus is 20% of salary and DA. So whatever is the amount of basic and DA, the total, bonus is 20% of that particular amount. Clear? So basic is 10,000 into 12. 1,20,000 is basic and 24,000 is my DA. So the total basic and DA is 1,44,000. Can you give me the amount of bonus? I'll show you the solution later on. First, you have to calculate along with me. So basic, make a statement to calculate the cost per hour, labor cost per hour rather. So basic is 10,000 into 12. DNS allowance is 2,000 per month into 12. Bonus 20% of salary and DA. Can you calculate bonus? Can you calculate bonus? Yes. Emolument means the whatever salary which we are getting. Yes, earnings are calculated as per income tax, like whatever is the TDS. TDS is calculated as per Income Tax Act only. Okay, 28,800 is the bonus, right? So 28,800 added over there. Other allowances 2,500 per month into 12. So bonus, I've got it 28,800, which is 144,000. 20% of 144,000 is 28,800. Employer's contribution to PF, 10% of salary and DA. 10% of salary and DA. So base salary means the basic salary. Basic salary and DA is 1,44,000. Basic salary and DA is 144,000. So 10% of 144. We have to calculate cost. So in cost, employer's contribution will be added. That exactly I explained you here. Clear? So employer contribution will be added to the labor cost. When we calculate earnings, employee contribution will be deducted. Clear? So these two important things you have to remember. So employer's contribution, can I get employer's contribution? Employer's contribution 1,44,000, 10%, so it's 14,400. Employer's contribution is 14,400. Can I get the total cost of employee? Basic plus DA plus bonus plus other employee allowances and plus employer's contribution. We are calculating the cost. So in the cost, we add employer's contribution because employer contribution is also cost to the organization. So whatever the organization is contributing towards the cost of the employee, towards the provident fund of an employee, it's an added cost of the employer. So every organization contributes almost equal amount of provident fund which the employee contributes. So if the employee is contributing 100, employer will also contribute 100. So the contribution towards provident fund is also an additional cost for the organization, right? Can I have the total cost, basic plus DA plus bonus plus other allowances plus employer's contribution? Can I have the total cost, the numerator I want? Can I have the numerator, the total cost? Basic 10,000 into 12, DNS allowance 2,000 into 12, bonus 20% of total basic and DA, which comes out to 28,800. Other allowances 2,500 into 12. Employer's contribution 10% of salary and DA. You know the basic salary, you know the DA. Add the 10% to it. Can I have the total cost? Yes, 14,400 is annually, of course. If you will take 10% of annual, it will come annually only. 2,17,200, I'm getting the answer. Is it the correct answer? 2,17,200. 2,17,200, I'm getting the answer from the students. I hope it's correct. So we have got the cost here. So total labor cost will include all the elements, emoluments and benefits which we are paying to the employee or the worker, including the contribution towards PF or ESI. Now the effective hours. Effective hours means 2,400 hours, out of which 400 hours are non-productive and treated as normal idle time. Normal idle time we can always deduct. It's just like the normal loss of material which we discussed, minus 400 the normal idle time. Clear? So it will be 2,000 effective hours. We always take effective hours here. So 2,000 effective hours. Clear? So 2,17,200 is the cost. 2,000 effective hours. Now mind it, if let us say if there is 200 additional abnormal idle time, we will not deduct abnormal idle time from here. Only normal idle time will be deducted. Yeah? That means 2,17,200. This cost will be covered by good hours, the productive hours, not the unproductive hours. Clear? So if I calculate 2,17,200 divided by 2,400, the total hours spent, divided by 2,400, 90.5. So if I calculate 2,7,200 divided by 2,400, it is coming as 90.5 per hour. All right. So, but my effective hours are 2,000. So we have to calculate the effective hours. That means the productive hours will cover the cost of the labor. The productive hours will cover the cost of the labor. How much is the cost per hour? Has anybody calculated? 2,17,200 divided by 2,000, the effective hours. Okay, the effective hours are coming to 108.6. Now look at this, students. Earlier, the effective hours, if I divided by the total hours, the rate per hour was 90.5. But when I have calculated from effective hours, the rate has increased. So labor cost per hour will increase. All right, labor cost per hour will increase. Here it was 90. But I have to divide it from the productive hours will cover the cost. 400 hours cannot cover the cost because they were non-productive. So only the productive hours will cover the cost. So cost per labor hour will increase. Earlier the cost was 90, but now my productive hours only we have to cover the cost. So my cost has increased from 90 to 108. So labor cost per hour will increase. So we can say normal idle time. Normal idle time increases the labor cost per hour. All right. So I hope you have understood this concept of earnings, of labor cost. And when we calculate the labor cost per hour, numerator should be the total cost and denominator should be the effective hours. Effective hours means we have to deduct the normal idle time hours and only the productive hours will cover the cost of the labor. So meaning thereby the normal idle time increases the labor cost per hour. Right? I hope I've managed to make you understand and you have understand this concept. Yes, cost per hour is 108.6. So I hope you have understood this. Now let me show you the proper answer. So this is the statement. So this the statement you have to make it like this. It's basically how you present your solution in the exam. All right. Statement showing computation of effective labor hourly cost. Effective means we have taken care of normal idle time. So the earnings, we have to calculate the earnings first. So basic pay was 10,000 into 12. So it's 1,20,000. DNS allowance into 12, it was 24,000. Bonus was 20% of this. So we have calculated is here. Employer's contribution to Provident Fund, it was 10% of basic and DA. So it's coming out to 14,400. Other allowances, 2,500 into 12. So this is the per month and this is the total. And these are the effective hours and this is the answer we have calculated. So you can look here. Annual working hours less normal idle time. We always deduct the normal idle time. All right. So 2,400 hours were the total and less 400 hours. So 2,000 were the effective hours, which out of which we have to calculate the hourly cost. So it's not necessary to write monthly, Dhanesh, but it's always better that you write because in a proper statement, the per month is basically the rate. All right. So basic pay per month, DNS allowance per month. So if it's optional, but of course, if you write that means you are referring to the rate also at which it is paid. What is the rate of basic pay per month? So it's also better to write it in a column of per month and per annum. When you make cost sheet also, there also you have to make a column of cost per unit and total cost. Right? So it's always better to write the rate also. So per month are actually the rate which we are paying all the emoluments. So what is the rate of basic? It's 10,000 per month. So this shows the rate, and then of course the per annum shows the actual salary which you are getting. 400, these 400 hours cost, these are not 400 hours cost. We never compute the cost of idle time, normal idle time. We have not calculated the cost of normal idle time. Who's asking this? Mohsin, we have not calculated the cost of 400 idle times. We have deducted from it. So the good hours, the productive hours is basically covering the total labor cost. Is it clear? So we have not calculated. It's part of the production cost. Normal idle time is always part of the production cost and it is covered by the good productive hours. All right. Abnormal idle time will go to profit or loss account. But normal idle time or normal loss, whatever in which way it's a loss, if it's a normal loss, it is part of production cost, and the good units or the productive units or the productive hours will cover the cost of the whatever the element of cost is this. So normal cost or normal idle time or normal loss will always be covered by the good units or the productive hours. Clear? So we have not calculated the cost of 400 hours. The productive hours have actually covered the cost, not the idle time hours. All right. So I hope you have understood this. Yes, abnormal idle time will go to costing profit or loss account. Normal idle time will always be part of the production cost. Clear? So I hope you've understood this. Moving on to another illustration. Just have a look at this illustration. Again, it's a very good illustration which will highlight how many hours of idle time can be identified and evaluated from a question, and we have to identify the number of idle time hours. So just read the question very carefully. Take a note of this question. Okay, I hope you've understood. So in a factory, working 6 days in a week and 8 hours each day, clear? A worker is paid at the rate of 100 per day basic plus DA at the rate of 120% of basic. So if basic rate is 100 and DA is 120%, so DA will be rupees 120. So basic is 100 and DA is 120. So that means 220 per day a worker is being paid. He is allowed to take 30 minutes off during his hours shift for meals, break, and a 10-minute recess for rest. So basically, it's a tea break and the lunch break. During a week, his card showed that his time was chargeable to. Now, this is bookkeeping. All right. Basically, time booking. So job X 15 hours, job Y 12 hours, job Z 13 hours. This information is given by time booking department. Time booking. Time booking will actually book his time which he has actually spent on the job, on the work, not only coming in and going out of the organization. Yeah. So the timekeeping will tell, okay, he has worked for 6 days and 8 hours each day. The timekeeping department will tell that he has worked for 8 hours. Time booking will tell exactly how much he has worked during 8 hours. Now I think you have understood the difference between timekeeping and time booking. So timekeeping means timekeeping will tell he was there inside the factory, inside the organization for 8 hours. Time booking will tell how much he has actually worked during those 8 hours. That means the rest of the time he was sitting idle. Clear? And how much time he should sit idle? 30 plus 10. 40 minutes in a day he should sit idle effectively. All right. But how much he has actually been sitting idle, that we have to calculate here. So during a week, his card shows this is the time. The time not booked was wasted waiting for a job. So this was the booked time. How much the time was booked? 15 plus 12 plus 13 was the time booked. And the time which was not booked was actually wasted. Clear? So state how would you allocate the wages of the workers for the week. So what you have to calculate here is number one, the total effective hours. All right. That means first of all, the total hours, then the normal idle time, and then the abnormal idle time. Clear? So again, the total hours, the normal idle time, and the abnormal idle time. So this is the first the segment you have to calculate. Then we have to calculate the cost. So the second step would be to calculate the cost. The third step would be whatever is the cost per hour. Cost per hour. In the first illustration, we have calculated the cost per hour. Here also we'll calculate the cost per hour. That cost per hour will be allocated to these three jobs. Clear? So there are three aspects and three segments of this question. Number one, the effective hours. Number two, the cost. So we'll calculate the cost per hour with these two steps. The third step will be to calculate the direct cost of this particular job. So for job X, for job Y, for job Z, what is the allocation of the cost to these three jobs? Clear? So first let us calculate the cost. So cost would be basic $100 DA 120. Clear? So here we'll be taking a break, so that will come out after the break. The cost I have calculated here, you have to calculate the number of hours. All right. So we'll break for just 5 to 7 minutes break, and then we'll come back. During that time, you just try if you can calculate the effective hours. All right. Cost is there. It will be per day. So this is per day. So we will be calculating the effective hours. You just try how much are the effective hours, how much the total, how much the normal idle time, how much the abnormal idle time. All right. And we'll meet you after the break. All right. So now let's come back from the break and continue this question. So calculated, we just I've written down the cost per day. So 100 plus 120, 220 is per day. Clear? And so these are the number of hours which we calculate. Let me just explain you also how it is to be done. Right? So here we have to calculate the hours. All right. If we can see the question, 6 days into 8 hours. Those who have not understood. So 6 days into 8 hours basically makes to be 48 hours. Here. And if we can see the question here. So 6 days into 8 hours each day. Here. So 48, a worker is paid at the rate of 100 per day. So if we have seen the question also here, 8 hours into 6 days, 48 hours we total made it, but 30 minutes and 10 minutes. I just explain you somebody who has not understood. 30 minutes and 10 minutes is a break, all right, for the normal idle time. So what I was explaining here, and I was trying to, okay, 48 hours basically per week, less 30 minutes plus 10 minutes. All right, it's per day. So 30 minutes and 10 minutes, if you calculate into 6 days, it will come out to be 4 hours. So this is a normal idle time. So normal effective hours should be 44 hours. The effective hours should be 44 hours. So this is the normal idle time. All right. Normal idle time we always deduct. So I hope you have understood. 6 days into 8 hours. So 48 hours per week. Here. 40 minutes per day is a break which should be given to the worker. So it's a normal break. So 40 minutes per day into 6 days will make out to be 4 hours. So out of 48 hours, 4 hours should be normal idle time. We always deduct the normal idle time. That means the effective 44 hours will cover the cost. It will cover the cost of the labor. We have not taken here any abnormal idle time. Clear? So 48 hours total, the laborer, this will be given by the timekeeping department. And 44 hours were the effective hours which the laborer or the worker should work. Effective 44 hours, they should work. All right. So it is they should work. And how much they have actually worked, how will we find out? Actually, the time booking department has given that for 15 hours plus 12 hours plus 13 hours. All right. So 15 hours plus 12 hours and plus 15 plus 12 and plus 13. He has actually worked for 40 hours. So this is actual work. This should be worked. The labor should have worked for 44 hours, but the labor has actually worked for 40 hours. So this 4 hours is abnormal idle time. Abnormal idle time. So I hope now it is understood. We always deduct the normal idle time. So effective labor hours should be 44. We will not calculate the cost per hour from 40 hours. We will calculate the cost per hour from 44 hours. We never take into account the abnormal 4 hours. All right. These are the abnormal idle time. Abnormal idle time will not be further deducted. So for us is the cost, whatever is the cost, divided by the effective hours. We will not take 40 here. We will take 44 here. That this denominator is very important. We never take the hours after deducting abnormal idle time. We never deduct abnormal idle time to calculate the cost per hour, because we have to calculate the normal cost per hour. Normal cost per hour. So to calculate normal cost per labor hour, we should know the normal hours which the laborer should work. It's not which they have actually worked. Clear? So this concept is very, very important. Otherwise, the question will be twisted and you will make the mistake. So the denominator should always be normal hours worked. Normal that the worker should work. not what the worker has actually worked. Clear? So these are the effective hours. So whenever we calculate the cost, per hour, what we need? We need the cost plus divided by the effective labor hours. All right. So cost divided by effective labor hours, not that after deducting the actual labor hours. Clear? So cost is, what was the cost? 220 per day. So 220 into 6. 220 into 6, the cost came out to 1320 and the effective hours were 44. Clear? So how much is the rate per hour? 30. So 30 is the normal labor cost per hour. Normal labor cost per hour. Here, we never take into account the abnormal idle time cost into it. So this should be the normal and the normal. Why don't we take abnormal? There's a logic behind it. So let us say this time abnormal idle time happened of 4 hours. Next time it won't happen. Clear? Or let us say 4 hours won't happen. Let us say the next time abnormal idle time has decreased from 4 to 3. So every time abnormal idle time will be different. But the normal idle time generally remains the same. So in every process, every week, the normal idle time is the same. You will give 40 minutes of break each day to a worker. But that 4 hours of abnormal idle time will not happen, every week. So this is how it is going to work. We have to calculate the normal cost per hour. That's why we take only the normal idle time. We take the effect of only normal idle time, and the effective hours will cover the cost of the labor. All right. Okay, let me see any queries you have. Piyush, normal idle, there is no formula as such. The only concept is that the normal idle time or whatever is the normal loss, the productive hours, the good hours will cover the cost of it. Clear? We never calculate the cost of normal idle time. Clear? We never calculate the cost of normal idle time. We calculate the cost of abnormal idle time, and then that cost is transferred to the costing profit or loss account. We never charge the abnormal idle time cost to production. Clear? So normal idle time cost we don't calculate. It's just that the effective hours, the productive hours will cover the cost of the labor. I hope you have understood this. So 30 is the labor cost, normal labor cost per hour. So first step was to calculate the effective hours, which we calculated here. So the first step was 48 were the total, less 4 the normal idle time. The effective hours were 44. The laborer actually worked for 40 hours, so the abnormal idle time is 4 hours. We calculate the labor cost per hour from effective hours after deducting only normal time. We never take the abnormal time into the picture. So 1320, the cost divided by 44. Our normal cost is the rupees 30 per hour. So this is per hour. Now the last segment is to calculate the cost of a job. All right. Here, if you can see. So this job, all right. Let me just show you. So the job and the labor has worked like this. So how to calculate the job? Let me show you this the working again, what you have understood. Total effective hours in a week, 8 hours minus the break time into 6 days, so 44 hours. Wages 1320, so the wage rate is this, and the abnormal time is this. So we'll calculate out of 30. Clear? So 30 is the wage rate per hour. 15 hours into 30, 12 hours into 30, and 13 hours into 30. So this is the cost. We'll calculate the wage rate per hour, normal wage rate per hour. Then we'll calculate the cost of the job. So this will be the cost, whatever it comes. And yes, it will be for 40 hours. It will be for 40 hours. So the laborer has worked for only 40 hours. He should have worked for 44 hours. Clear? So the balance 4 hours is abnormal idle time. So the balance 4 hours, 4 into 30, this is the abnormal idle time. Whatever it is will go to costing profit or loss account. All right. So now let me show you. So this we have just explained, and this is the way we do it. So this is again the statement. Allocated to job 15 hours into 30, 12 hours into 30. See, this is the normal wage rate per hour. Clear? And the 4 hours, this is abnormal idle time. So this is the abnormal idle time. So abnormal idle time into again the same rate per hour. This will go to costing P&L account. Clear? So the total cost makes out to 1320. So I hope you have understood this question. Any queries on this question? Abnormal cost, Rama, abnormal cost will go to costing profit or loss account. It will not be charged to the production cost. This cost will be charged to the employee cost, the direct employee cost, and this will be go to the costing profit or loss account. Clear? It will not be part of the production cost. So what do you mean by the production cost? We have the material, we have the labor, we have the expenses. So these are all the production costs. This, whatever goes directly to the profit or loss account does not go to the production cost. So abnormal cost, whenever it is abnormal idle time, whenever it's abnormal material loss, it will never go to the production cost. Any abnormal cost will always be charged to profit or loss account. It will never be part of the production cost. Clear? It will be calculated, but not part of production cost. So I hope you have understood. Yeah, all right. Alok, Dhanash, I'm glad you have understood the concept and this question. So shall we move forward? Any doubts in this particular question? Just have a final look. So the hours you have to calculate, the cost you have to calculate. The third part will be to calculate the cost per hour. So we'll have the total cost divided by the effective hours. Effective hours means the normal hours. Clear? And then the actual hours worked. So this was the actual hours worked. So effective hours minus actual hours will give you the abnormal hours. Clear? And this is the way we go. Abnormal cost, we never take it to the production cost. We take it to profit or loss account. All right. Let's move on to the next segment. We have done this. All right. Overtime. Now, again, overtime is basically a major factor, and many workers, as you know, they work overtime. That means beyond the normal working hours. Clear? Now, why anybody would work beyond the working hours? Why? I mean, there is, if let us say 8 hours per day, every person has to work. Then why the person will work beyond 8 hours? Why? The reason could be many. The reason could be, sometimes the employee tries to work for overtime. So the first reason could be, let us say there is a huge production order, and to meet up to that production order, we have to work overtime because we have to meet the order and then we have to deliver the production. So it can be like, because we have to meet up the production target, so we work overtime. The second reason could be the workforce is very less. The number of employees and the workers are less in compared to the work that is there, or in compared to the production or the output or the work in an organization. So the workload is more and the manpower is less. So whatever is the manpower, whatever are the number of employees, whatever are the number of workers in an organization, the workload is huge. So they have to work beyond the working hours. So if it's an 8 hour a day you have to work, they are working for 11 hours a day, they are working for 12 hours a day, because the workload is too much. So maybe the number of manpower is less, that's why overtime. And the third reason could be that deliberately the person is not doing any work during the day, or is doing very less work, and they are voluntarily and deliberately staying after the normal office hours, after the normal working hours, and they are staying back just to make the overtime. Clear? Why? Because overtime is paid at generally the double of the rate of the normal wage rate. Let us say the normal wage rate, if I talk about the hourly rate, let us say the normal wage rate is 100 per hour. If you are working overtime, so for that extra time which you have worked, for extra time, I'm not talking about the total time. The total hours were 8 hours. You have worked for 10 hours, for example. So the extra 1 or 2 hours, whatever is the standard kept. So extra 1 hour or 2 hours, if you are working, that those 2 hours will be paid at double the rate of the normal wage rate. Here, so that's why the employees or the workers try that they should stay beyond working hours. They should work overtime. They should show that, okay, they have worked overtime, because for those extra hours beyond the normal hours, they will be paid at double the rate. So that's why employees or workers deliberately also do that. So that there the management has to keep a check on those employees or the workers. Clear? So what could be the reasons for overtime? Number one, there is a huge production target and the company has to meet the production target. So the production and the manufacturing is going day and night to complete up that order. The second reason could be less manpower in an organization and the workload is more than the manpower. So every person, every employee, any worker has to do overtime because the employees are less. Clear? And the third is, which has to be kept a check by the management, that the workers or the employees deliberately wait after the working hours to basically, so that their overtime payment should be generated, which is paid at normally double the rate of the normal wage rate. All right. So let's understand. Work done beyond normal working hours is known as overtime work. Overtime payment is the amount of wages paid for working beyond normal working time. Overtime consists of two elements: normal wages for overtime work and premium payment for overtime work. So the normal working hours are 8. Let us say the normal working hours are 8 and I have worked for 10 hours. So for 8, it's the normal wage I'll be getting. Okay? Let us say the normal wage is 100 per hour. All right. And the overtime rate is 200 per hour. So for 8 hours, I'll be paid 100 into 8. This is the normal. For 10 hours, I will be paid the normal wage rate also. So 100 into 2. The overtime is the 2 hours. 2 hours overtime. So for 2 hours, I will be paid the normal wage rate also. And 200 into the overtime rate also. Clear? So this is the overtime premium. Though the overtime rate will also be paid and the normal wage rate also will be paid. We'll be understanding in a better way once we do the question. It depends upon the policy. So normal wages for overtime rate and the premium payment for the overtime rate. Overtime payment, wages for overtime at the normal rate plus premium payment for the overtime work. So it can be 100 also. So 100 is the normal and 100 is the premium payment. The rate for overtime work is higher than the normal time rate. Usually it's double the normal rate. Depends upon the policy also, but the Factories Act 1948 says that, should be the double of the rate. The extra amounts are paid over the normal rate is called the overtime premium. So rates and may either be fixed by an entity or it's required by any statute in force, basically, which is the Factory Act. Overtime premium should not be less than the premium calculated as per the statute. So whatever the act has mentioned, you can give more than that, but not the less. So this is about the overtime. So we'll understand it better when we do the questions. The causes could be the basically urgency of work. All right. To make up any shortfall in production. So we have to work overtime. May be necessary to make up a shortfall in production due to some fault of the management. Clear? So there was some fault of the management. That's why we have to work overtime because we could not complete the order. Or overtime work may be resorted to or secure in excess of the normal to take advantage of an expanding market of a rising demand. So this could be the causes, various causes of the overtime. If the overtime is resorted at the desire of the customer. Now, where we should charge the overtime? All right, the overtime payment, where should we charge? Because the normal wage rate will be charged to the normal production if it is a direct cost and to overheads if it's an indirect. But where exactly we should charge the overtime? So if let us say we have received the order from the customer, all right, and that customer wants it urgently. So that overtime cost will be charged to that customer job only. Clear? If overtime is required to cope up with the general production program of that department, meeting urgent orders, so it will be charged to that particular department who works overtime. So if that is the policy of the department that, okay, we have to work overtime because there are some urgent orders or for any reason, that it will be charged to the department. If overtime is worked in a department due to fault of another department, clear? Let us say the raw material could not be transferred on time, so the production could not start on time, and then when the raw material came from the stores department, then the production department started. Or let us say the raw material purchase was delayed, so the production delayed, and when the production started, then they have to make it very fast to complete the production order. So that production is because of the fault of the purchase department, so then overtime will be charged to the faulty department. Clear? So the treatment basically tells you that where the overtime cost should be charged. All right, which department, which point the overtime cost will be charged. And if the overtime works due to abnormal reasons, any abnormal overtime or any abnormal idle time or any abnormal material loss or any abnormality will always be charged to costing profit or loss account. So whether it's idle time or whether it's overtime or whether it's a loss, if it's abnormal, it will always go to costing profit or loss account. All right. So I hope this should be clear to you. So we have this question for you. Just go through the question. Let me see if any queries we have. $30 wage rate is fixed for any company. 30 wage rate, I didn't get this question, Preeti. For 10 hours at 100 per hour and 2 normal working hours as per the government rule. Normal working hours are generally 8 hours per day. 8 hours per day for 6 days a week. All right. So the normal hours are 8. And if it is a 5-day, then it becomes to 8.30 hours. All right. So 8 hours and 30 minutes if a 5 working day. And if it's a 6 days per week, it will be 8 hours. So generally, it is generally accepted and followed across organizations. All right. There is no hard and fast rule. Some organizations have 9 hours per day also they follow. But in most of the organizations, if it's a 6-day, it will be 8 hours. Yeah. All right, just read through the question. All right. Just take a note of this question so that we'll be solving it. Now here, I made you understand what do you mean by the earnings and what do you mean by the cost. Clear? Here you have to calculate the earnings also, and you have to allocate the employee cost to the job. So you have to make 3 statements. Number 1, you have to calculate the earnings. Second, you have to calculate the employee cost. And that employee cost will be allocated to the job, which is the statement number 3. So be very careful when you calculate the earnings and the cost. As I told you, there's a difference how we calculate the earnings and how we calculate the cost. So let us see what all are required. So there are 2 employees, A and B. So they are getting the basic wages, 10,000 and then 16,000. It's not written per month. It's not written per month. So take it as annual. Clear? Okay, it is basically for a month only. So we will calculate it for a month only. It's not given annual. It's given from the particulars of a month. So that means it's just monthly and you have to calculate the monthly only. How you will get to know? The normal working hours of a month are 200. So all the information is given for a month and you have to calculate for a month only. Clear? So we have DNS allowance 50% of the basic, contribution to Provident Fund and contribution to ESI on the basic wages. So we have to calculate on basic wages. So 8% of the basic, 8% of the basic, 2% and 2% of the basic. Overtime hours, okay, it's written here, it's actually 10. Clear? So overtime hours are 10 hours. Normal working hours for the month are 200. Overtime is paid at double the total of normal wages and DNS allowance. So whatever is the overtime hours and whatever is the rate of wages and DNS allowance, the wages and DNS allowance, overtime is paid on these two the parameters of the salary. Employers contributing to state insurance and provident fund are at equal rates with the employees. So that means this contribution has to be employer also and employee also. Both will contribute, and the contribution of both are the same. That means employer also 8%, employee also 8%. Clear? ESI, employer also 2% and employee also 2%. So as I told you, the contribution to Provident Fund or ESI, if there is a contribution, employer and employee generally contribute equal. But sometimes if they have to contribute more, then employer contributes more. Generally, it is equal. But if employer or the employee has to contribute more, then it will be the employer who will contribute more. So it will always be employer who will contribute more than the employee. But most of the cases, they give the equal contribution. Clear? Two workers were employed on jobs X, Y, and Z. So they are the jobs. So once we calculate the labor cost, then only we will allocate to the particular job. So always remember, the employee cost has to be allocated, not the earnings. We will not allocate the earnings to these jobs. The employee cost has to be allocated to these three jobs and not the earnings. These are the things where students make mistake. And there's a very important information. Overtime was done on job Y only. So overtime, only A worker has done overtime and A worker has done overtime on only job Y. Clear? So first of all, you have to calculate the earnings. Clear? Now earnings will calculate. What are the earnings? Now you please calculate. I'll guide you how to do it. Earnings of A and B. So make a statement. Computation of earnings of worker A and B. Basic wages 10,000. DNS allows 50% of 10,000. So that will make out to be 5,000. So 10,000 plus 5,000, the basic and the DNS allowance. Then overtime you have to calculate for worker A. You have to calculate the overtime for worker A. So 10 hours. How you will calculate what is the cost of the overtime here? How you will calculate? Now 10,000 plus 50%, 5,000. So 15,000 is the earning of A, excluding overtime. Clear? So 15,000 is the earning of A. Now 15,000 is for 200 hours. Clear? You have to calculate for 10 hours. So 10 divided by 200. 15,000 into 10 divided by 200. So it comes out to 750. Clear? 750 for 750 per hour for A. Now overtime is worked for double the rate. This is at the normal rate into 2, because overtime is paid double the total of normal wages and DNS allowance. Clear? So normal wages and DNS allowance total is 15,000. This 15,000 is given for 200 hours. What will be the cost? What will be the wages for 10 hours? Clear? So 10 hours wages would be 750. Now this is at the normal rate. The overtime has to be paid for double the rate. So we have multiplied by 2. So overtime should come out to be 1,500. So overtime should be 1,500. So what will be the earning of A? 10,000 plus 5,000 plus 1,500. So let me show you this, the earnings. So 10,000, 5,000 and overtime wages 1,500. How we calculated? 15,000 was for 200 hours. How much is the earnings will be for 10 hours? These are the total hours. So 15,000 earnings A has received for 200 hours. How much are the earnings for 10 hours? So that comes out to 750. This is 750 as per the normal wage rate. But overtime is paid at the double of the rate. So into 2. That's how it has come to 1,500. If you can see, I'll show you again. Overtime is paid at double the total of normal wages and DNS allowance. So whatever is the rate, you just double it for overtime. Clear? So this is how it is done. 1500 total wages for A is 16,500, for B is 24,000. There is no overtime in the case of B. All right. And when we calculate earnings, I told you there will be the contribution, employee contribution will be deduction. So this contribution is of employee, not employer. Clear? Employee contribution will be as a deduction. So whenever we calculate earnings, whatever is the gross less the deductions, and this is the balance which the employee receives. Clear? So total wages, total less the deductions, and then the net wages or the net salary paid. So this contribution which we are deducting is employee contribution. So it was 8% on basic. So this was 8% on basic. Basic means 10,000. And this was 2% on basic. Basic was 10,000. So 8% on 10,000 and 2% on 10,000. So it has come like this. Similarly, 8% on 16,000, 2% on 16,000. So the contribution are the same and it's an equal. So this contribution which we have deducted is employee contribution. All right. I hope you have understood this. Any doubt before I proceed? If abnormality occurs by another department fault, it will be charged to the another department. All right. 1500. Yes, the abnormal idle time will be 1500. See, if there is an abnormality in the idle time, or you are asking abnormality in the overtime. Overtime, if it is charged, it has to be charged to another department. All right. Department, we can charge it as a production cost. There should not be any abnormality. If yes, an abnormality proves, then of course it will go to costing profit or loss account. Any abnormality, if it belongs to any department, has to go to costing or profit or loss account, irrespective of any department. If it's a normal overtime, then it will be charged to that particular department if there's a fault in it. Right. So this is the net wages earned. So we have calculated the earnings of workers here. So earnings, total wages less deductions. Clear? And whenever we calculate the cost, total wages plus employer contribution. Clear? And earnings, total wages less employee contribution. So these two things you have to remember always. Clear? Now the second segment is we have to calculate the cost of the employee. So employee cost, what we require for employee cost? We require the total cost. So what will the total cost will be made for? The second statement now we are calculating the total cost of an employee and cost per hour. So total cost, we'll take the basic, we'll take the DNS, we'll take employer contribution here, employer contribution. All right, this thing should be remember. Employer contribution, then employer contribution to PF, employer contribution to ESI. So that will be made the total cost of the labor again. Overtime, whenever we calculate, now this again thing to be remember, whenever we are calculating, I told you many times, whenever we calculating the labor cost per hour, we always calculate as per the normal scenario. The normal labor cost per hour, anything which will happen this time might not happen next time, that thing we will not take into account. So to calculate the labor cost, we should not take the overtime there. All right. So how we calculate the labor cost, we'll just see. This is a statement for the labor cost. We have taken the gross wages here. Gross wages means this is the basic and this is the DA. So gross wages means basic and DA. See, we have added the employer contribution of PF and ESI. So whenever we calculate the employee cost of an organization, we add the employer's contribution. And whenever we calculate the earnings, we deduct employee contribution. Clear? So these two things you should remember. So total wages and basic and DA, Employer contribution also we add. So these are the gross wages earned. See here, we have not taken overtime here. Why? Because this time overtime has happened. Next time it might not happen. We should not take overtime to calculate the wages rate per hour, because this rate should be the normal rate. Normal means this has to be applied in every circumstances. So whenever we calculate the cost per hour, anything which will not happen every time will not take into consideration. You should take all those aspects which will happen every time in every production process. Everything that will happen every week, every month, or every day. Only those aspects you have to consider. Anything which will not happen next time, you will not take into account whenever you will calculate the cost per hour. Because overtime has happened this time. Next time it might not happen. So why it should affect my normal cost per hour? So normal cost per labor hour should comprise of only those things which generally happen, which are the part of the cost every time, every month, every cycle. I hope you have understood this. That's why we have not taken overtime here, because this is not part of the normal scenario. It might not happen in every cycle. Clear? So these are the gross wages, employees' contribution, gross wages earned, the normal working hours. All right, there was no normal idle time. Had it been a normal idle time in this question, we would have deducted. There is no normal idle time in the question, so we have not taken into account. Overtime is not part of the normal working hours, so we take the normal cost divided by the normal working hours. Clear? So we don't take overtime or abnormal idle time whenever we calculate the cost per hour. Right? So gross wages divided by the normal working hours, gross wages divided by the normal working hours. So we have calculated the normal wages rate per hour. Clear? Now with this, we have to go to the cost per job. Clear? Any doubt? Contribution, which contribution we have deducted? Contribution is the employee contribution. Who has asked this? Kavita. Kavita, we have deducted the employee contribution to Provident Fund. It's a deduction from a salary. I have contributed 800 towards my Provident Fund. This contribution has to be done from the salary of every employee. Only then the net salary is paid. So if I am getting a salary of 1,100, I am asking you please deduct 100 for my Provident Fund. So this 100, or in this question it is 800 and 200. This I will get at the time of when I leave this job or when I retire. This is my money. I will get it back, but only after the retirement. Provident Fund is a retirement benefit. So every month we get we make a deduction from a salary. The employer makes a deduction from the salary of every employee. The employee will get it back, but only after his retirement from the organization or after he leaves the organization. Clear? So it's a deduction. It's a regular deduction every month. All right. I hope you know the concept of Provident Fund. Okay. So I'm glad that you have understood. So this is the labor cost we have calculated. The point I was stressing upon, that we always take the gross wages, the normal cost and the normal working hours to calculate the normal rate per hour. Any abnormal thing or any overtime, we never take into consideration to calculate normal cost per hour. Yeah. Now the third segment is that we have to allocate it to the jobs. So 80 per hour and 120 per hour is the 128 per hour is the cost. Now we have to allocate it to the jobs. So this we have done. So there are 3 jobs, X, Y, and Z, and the workers are this. So 16,000 was the cost. I'm telling you, we allocate the cost and not the earnings. If I tell you here, The earnings of A was 16,500. That was the earnings. We don't allocate the earnings, I'm repeating. We don't allocate the earnings to the jobs. We allocate the cost to the jobs. Clear? The employee cost we will allocate to the job, not the earnings. So the employee cost is 16,000 and 25,600 respectively. 16,000 for employee A and 25,600 for employee B. So 16,000 we have calculated as per the ratio given in the question. If I take you to the question back, 40%, 30% and 30%. So worker A has contributed 40% of the time to X, 30% to Y and 30% to Z. So the ratio is 4:3:3. And for worker B, the ratio is 5:2:3. I hope you've understood this. So worker A has contributed this much proportion to different jobs. Worker B has contributed this much proportion to different jobs. So 4:3:3 and 5:2:3. So 4:3:3 and 5:2:3. So the cost of the worker A, the employee cost, not earnings, I'm repeating. The cost of worker A, the cost of worker B will be allocated proportionately as per the ratio given in the question. So as much the time they must have spent on these jobs. Clear? And over time we have calculated it was not a portion. It's the cost for this job, and 1,500 we have already allocated. So 1,500 was the overtime done by worker A on job Y. So we have directly brought it over here. So this is the total cost of job X, total cost of job Y and total cost of job Z done by worker A and worker B. So this information can be basically done by the job card. So job card will tell that this particular job worker A has worked this and worker B has worked for this time. Clear? So these are the normal wages and basic. They could consider the overtime rate which we have calculated. So this is how it is to be done. So the first segment is the earnings of the workers. The second was calculating the employee cost. And the third was to allocating the employee cost to various jobs. Clear? So this is basically we have calculated the production cost. Swamik, it's given in the question that overtime is done only on Y. See, we have not assumed it. Shomik, if you can see the question, overtime was done on job Y and why only A workers done over? Because it is given in the question. There is no overtime done by worker B. Only overtime done by worker A. It's given in the question. Clear? 10 hours. I've just written it over here. It was written here. 10 hours was done only by worker A. It was given in the question. Clear? No overtime was done by worker B. So I hope now the doubt is clear. Shavik, if we read the question, overtime is done only by worker A and on job Y. Nothing is assumed here. Everything is given in the question. Clear? I hope your doubt gets clear once you see the question. All right. Shall we move forward to another question? Any doubt in this question? All right, Shavik, I'm glad that you have understood. So this is the employee cost. This is what the employee earnings. This is how we have calculated the employee cost over the jobs. Moving to another illustration. Another very good illustration coming our way. More we do the illustrations, the more we understand the concept. So the basic wage rate is 100 per hour. So this is the basic wage rate, and overtime rates are given like this. Before and after normal working hours. Before means if the normal working hours starts from 9 a.m. and I have reached the company at 8 a.m. So 1 hour before, or it could be later in the evening. So before 9 a.m., let us say the normal times are 9 to 6. So before 9 a.m. and after 6 p.m. So before and after normal working hours. The rate will be 175% of basic wage rate. Clear? So here it comes out to 175 per hour. Clear? Sundays and holidays, if you're coming on Sundays and if you are coming on holidays, then the rate will be 225 of basic wage rate. So basic wage rate is 100, 225% of 100, it will make to 225 per hour. All right. So 100 per hour is the basic, 175 rupees per hour before and after working normal hours, and Sundays and holidays 225 per hour. So three rates we have done. One is the basic, the normal one, and two are the overtime ones. Yeah. So during the year, the previous year, that means during the whole year. So these hours for the whole year per annum. Clear? Normal hours were these. Before and after were these, and on Sundays and holidays were these. So total hours worked in in this organization was 1,25,000 hours. So I hope you got the question. Okay. So this, just take a note of this question. So this is a second part of the question, the normal hours. Now we have given this is the information for the entire company, the whole organization. So we'll calculate the cost as per the whole organization. So this information will be used to calculate cost per hour. Total cost divided by total hours. Clear? Total cost divided by total hours. So we'll get the cost per hour. So this cost per hour then will be allocated to the particular job. See, so we calculate the cost per hour on the basis of the total information, the information of the whole organization. And then that per hour will be allocated to calculate the cost of this particular job. So out of these, if you understand, out of these 1 lakh hours, 1,000 hours was consumed on this job Z. Out of the total overtime hours, 100 hours were consumed on this job Z. Out of the Sundays and holidays, the total Sundays and holidays, whatever all the employees have worked for all the whole year, 25 hours actually were worked on job Z. Clear? So 1125 hours were consumed on job Z, for which we have to do the costing. Calculate the labor cost chargeable to job Z in all these three cases. So these three are the independent cases. They are the exclusive cases. Separately we have to charge. Where overtime is worked regularly throughout the year as a policy due to workers' shortage. See, the cases are totally different. In the first case, they say that this 1,25,000 hours happen every year. When something happens every time, whether it's an overtime, if that overtime is also happening every time, it will become normal. All right, I'm repeating. Even overtime, if it's happening every time, it will be considered as a normal time only. That exactly it's mentioned in the first case. Otherwise, it's overtime, but they are saying this overtime happens regularly throughout the year because there is a workers shortage. So in this company, the workers have to come before and after working hours. The workers actually come on Sundays and holidays as regularly because there's a worker shortage. That means 1,25,000 hours are the normal working hours, including overtime. All right. I hope you've understood this concept. This fundamental is very important. Whenever we calculate the cost per hour, we should calculate the cost per hour under normal circumstances. And when overtime is also a normal circumstance, we should include overtime also in calculating the normal cost per hour. So in the first case, the normal working hours which happen in this company are 1,25,000 hours. So it's a normal rate here. So 1,25,000 hours are the normal hours, and 100 per hour and 175 and 225 per hour. So they are basically the total. So 1 lakh hours into 100. 20,000 hours into 175, 5,000 hours into 225. So this is the normal cost of an organization. So total cost, how much is the total cost? 1 lakh into 100, 20,000 into 175, 5,000 into 225. We have separate rates for every three category. We have separate rate for basic. For the normal hour, we have 100. For beyond working hours, we have 175. For Sundays and holidays, we have 225. And these are the normal hours. Even if it's overtime, it's considered to be normal. So what will be the total cost for these hours? Can you give me the total cost? Anybody? 1 lakh into 100, 20,000 into 175, 5,000 into 225. Can anybody tell me the... Yes, labor cost is the CTC, cost to the company. Rightly said, Abhishek Pandey. Labor cost is actually the cost to the company. Clear? And earnings is the net amount, that is the takeaway which is basically received by the employee. So labor cost is actually CTC. Rightly said. All right. So can I get the total cost? 123,125 is the total cost. 1 lakh hours into 100 per hour. Can I get the total cost in this question? 1 lakh hours into 100 per hour, 20,000 hours into 175 per hour, 5,000 into 225 per hour. Can I get the total cost? Anybody who's calculating? Okay, 1 crore 46 lakh 25,000 who has calculated this. Okay, so one student has calculated the total cost comes out to 1 crore 46 lakh 25,000. 1 crore 46 lakh 25,000. How it has come? 1 lakh into 100, 20,000 into 175 and 5,000 into 225. So this is the total cost, total labor cost, and it's considered to be normal in the first case. Total hours will be 1 lakh 25,000. So total hours are the normal hours here, because in this case, the company is saying in the first case that 1 lakh 25,000 hours are the normal hours, even if it's overtime, but it is normal in this company because there is worker shortage. Clear? So this is the total cost divided by the total labor hours. So how much is the normal labor cost per hour? Normal labor cost per hour. We are doing the first case, where overtime is also the regular, the normal scenario. Clear? So how much is the total rate per hour? 1 crore 46 lakh 25,000 divided by 1 lakh 25,000. Normal labor cost per hour is 117 per hour. In the first case, we are doing the first case. I hope everybody has calculated. Yes. So this is 1 crore 46 lakh 25,000, the total cost divided by the total labor hours, the work hours worked 1 lakh 25,000. 117 is the per hour normal labor cost per hour in the first case. So normal labor cost per hour, we have to now calculate the hours worked on job Z. All right. So this is the normal rate wage per hour. Then if you can see here, 100 in the first case into 175 and into 225. All right. So this is how we have to calculate the job Z for this particular first case. Yes. So this is the normal wage rate per hour. I hope this you have calculated. So in the first case, we have calculated this. For 1125 per hour, for 1125 hours, the total cost, can you calculate for 1125 hours the total cost? So if we calculate through that also, 131,625. So in the first case, for this particular job, for the first case, the normal cost which will be allocated to this job will be 131,625, 1,31,625. Yes, 131,625. So you can do it this way also, or you can do it this way also. Any which way you can calculate. Clear? So as per the first case, the whole 1,25,000 hours were the normal hours. So we calculated the normal total cost divided by normal total hours. The rate is 117 per hour. Now, as per this rate, we have to calculate and we have to charge the cost of job Z. So either we can calculate it separately because everything is normal in this first case, or you can just calculate and multiply it with 117. So the cost for job Z and the first case is 131,625. I hope you have understood this. Now let's see the second case where overtime is worked irregularly to meet off the requirements of production. So when overtime is worked irregularly means now it will be not charged to the production cost, but will be charged to the indirect cost of that department. Clear? So we know that which department the overtime is being incurred. So in the second case, only for 1 lakh hours, it will go to the production and the rest of the overtime will go to the indirect cost of that department. I'm repeating. In the first case, the full cost has gone to the production of that department. I'm repeating. In the first case, the total cost was the normal cost and the total cost was charged to the production cost of that department. In the second case, only the normal hours will be charged to the production cost of that department, and the overtime, since it is irregular, will be charged to the overheads cost of that department. All right. Only if it is, because it is irregular, so it will be charged to the overhead cost of that department. Clear? So the normal cost will be 1 lakh into 100, of course. For the second case, the normal cost will be 1 lakh into 100 and 20,000 into 175 and 5,000 into 225 will be part of the overhead cost of that department. Clear? So if we can work it out here, okay, this was the first case which we were doing, basic rate, the 175 rate and 225. I think this we have understood that per hour. This was the first case, the total cost which we have done. 1 lakh into 100, 20,000 into 175, 5,000 into 225, right? The total wages for 125,000 hours was this. So this is the rate we calculated. Total cost divided by the total hours, which we considered as normal in the first case. So where it is worked regularly, this will be the cost of the job. So the total cost of all the three aspects, 100, 175 and 225 was charged to production because it's considered as regular. When it is irregular, the employee cost will only be the normal. That 175 and 225, the extra, the overtime part will be charged to the factory overhead, the overtime charge. That means extra 75 and extra 125, the overtime. Yeah. So the overtime will be charged to the factory overhead. The overtime, the premium amount will be charged to the factory overhead and the basic will be charged to the employee cost. Here. And the rest overtime will be charged as factory overhead of that particular department only. It's not abnormal, it's irregular. So there's a difference between the two. Had it been abnormal, it would have gone directly to profit and loss account. It would not be charged to that department. But here it will be between the direct cost and the indirect cost. So the normal will be charged to the normal cost, the production cost, and the rest will be charged to the overhead cost, overheads, indirect. Here, whatever is the extra cost of it. All right. So this you have to understand it. So the normal 100 will be charged as per the normal cost, the basic rate, and the premium amount will be charged to the overheads. Clear? The third case is the overtime is worked at the request of the job. So all the total cost of the job will be charged to that particular job or the customer. Yeah. So here it is basically, it will be charged to that particular job. So job is the cost object. So the total cost will be charged to that job. All right. Not to the department, but to the job. So here, this was the total cost at the basic rate and the overtime premium was charged to the job only. The total cost is charged to the job and not to the department. Clear? So there are all the three cases, and this example is very good to understand the concept of the overtime. So overtime is always charged as per the premium. Okay, let me just see. This type of question, so we can do only one working of point B, and then there is no difference between amounts. I didn't understand the student. Is this type of question comes, so we can do only one working in point B and C? It's always better to basically charge to calculate the working note. All right. For anything, even if it comes the same, it's always better to basically make the working note for every question and every point. It's always better. All right. So I think I've explained it properly. What is the normal? The only fundamental is, if overtime is considered normal, it should be part of your normal working cost. Otherwise, it should be part of the overhead or the profit or loss account or the particular job. All right. Moving on to another question, which is again a very good question. Just take a note of this question. I think last question for this session. The next concepts we will continue in the next session of employee. So we'll end up with this question, and just take a note of this question. So there are 4 workers, Ram, Sham, Mohan and Kundan. There are 4 workers. Try to understand the question. Who are paid wages on the basis of 100 per day, 120 per day, 130 per day and 2500 per month. So out of these 4, 3 are being charged on per day basis and 1 is charged per month basis. Yeah, so you will make the statement employee wise. Ram, Sham, Mohan and Kundan. Standard working days in a week are 6 of 8 hours. Clear? So 6 into 8 will make to 48 hours in a week. For the month of October, there was only one holiday other than Sunday. Clear? So one Sunday was there and one holiday for which no payment was made to employee. So there was only one holiday other than Sunday for which no payment was made to employee, except Kundan, who was paid full month. So Kundan was paid for on a monthly basis. So he's paid even for that one holiday. But Ram, Sham and Mohan was not paid for this one holiday. Clear? That means Ram, Sham and Mohan was paid for Sundays, but not for that one holiday, which was in addition to Sunday. Clear? Sundays are considered paid holidays. So all the 4 were paid for Sundays, but Ram, Sham and Mohan were paid per day. So they were not paid for that one holiday. Employees are paid for Sunday also, even there is no working on that day. So Sundays were paid. Clear? Okay. No, there is another session for employee cost that will be on Sunday. All right. Provident fund contribution is 8% of monthly wages by employer and employee each. ESI is 5% of monthly wages by employer and 4% by employee. So here you should take note of provident fund contribution. For provident fund contribution by employer and employee is equal, 8% each. Okay. But ESI contribution 5% by employer and 4% by employee. So you should take a note of this. When you will be calculating the earnings, then you have to deduct the employee contribution, which will be 8% for PF and 4% for ESI. But when you are calculating the employee cost, then you have to add 8% for PF and 5% the employer one for ESI. Clear? So here the percentage are different in terms of ESI. You should know where to take what. In earnings, which one to take, and employee cost, which one to take. I've made you understand many times, so there should not be any mistake. On the basis of information required to calculate the month for October. So you have to calculate the money. Okay. In the last material costing gave problem at the end of the note. Will you please? All right, Saurabh, I'll just try to share the answer for that particular PPT, which I must have given you the question for. Surely I'll be consider. All right. Now let us quickly understand this question. What we have to calculate? Amount of net wages receivable by each employee from the employer. So we have to calculate the earnings here, earnings. Clear? In the second, we have to calculate total amount of provident fund required to be deposited by the employer. Employer will deposit both the contribution, employee contribution also and employer contribution also. So both the PF contribution will go to the, basically will be deposited by the employer. All right. ESI also it will be deposited. So both employer and employee. Total labor cost. See, there is a difference between earnings and labor cost. In the first thing, you have to calculate the earnings by each employee. So how many are employees? 4. Ram, Shyam, Mohan and Kundan. So make a statement accordingly. Ram, Shyam, Mohan and Kundan. 100, 120, 130. So if I basically explain you. Okay. So you have to do it like this. Ram, Shyam, Mohan and Kundan. All right. So he's paid 100. Let me see. What is the basically the rate? 100, 120, 130. 100, 120 and 130. 100, 120, 130 and 2,500 per month. It's per day. Okay. It's per day. And it's per day. Clear? Now they are paying per day, Ram, Shyam, Mohan and Kundan. And number of days, we are talking about October. October has 31 days. In 31 days, Kundan will be paid for full month. So that means he will be paid 2,500 for October. Ram, Shyam, Mohan are paying on day wise. Day wise means they are not paid for one holiday. So minus 1 day for that one holiday. If you see here, there was one holiday other than Sunday for which no payment was made to employees except Kundan, who was paid for full month. Clear? So here, that means for 30 days, these three will be paid. So 100 into 30, 120 into 30 and 130 into 30. Ram, Shyam and Mohan will be paid for 30 days because October month is for 31 days and they have worked for 30 days. For 1 day, which was a holiday, these three workers were not paid except Kundan because he was paid monthly basis. Clear? So this is how it will be. 3,000 for October month paid to Ram. 1,000 into 30 into 120. 3,600 was paid to Shyam. And 130, 3,900 was paid to Mohan. So this was the gross they were paid. All right. So Ram, Shyam and Mohan for 30 days. For one holiday, they were not paid. Kundan was paid for the entire month. We have to calculate the earnings. Earnings means less contribution. Contribution, which contribution? Employee contribution. Employee contribution of PF and ESI you will deduct. Clear? So PF contribution you will deduct and ESI contribution you will deduct of a particular employee. All right. So if we see the question, 8% is employee contribution and ESI contribution of employees 4%. So 8% and 4% of the salary, that monthly wages will be your contribution. So minus 8% of 3,000 and 4% of 3,000. So PF is 8% and ESI is 4%, employee wala part. All right. That you have to deduct to calculate the net salary. So this is how you have to do. You can complete the question. I've just explained you. We'll be sharing this question. So this will be the total wages gross less PF contribution less you have to deduct. All right. Less PF contribution of employee, less ESI contribution of employee. So what is the balance will be the takeaway for all the 4 employees. All right. So whenever we calculate earnings, the total wages less deductions and the net earnings we pay. So the ESI and PF contribution of the employee you have to deduct. Clear? So moving to the question again. Okay. Now the total amount of provident fund required to be deposited by the employer. This I can show you here. Any doubt in this question? Yes, 30 days all except Kundan because he's paid for the month. The rate and ESI, the PF and ESI rate is generally, you have to use whatever is given in the question. It will always be given in the question. So you don't have to assume, it's given in the question. Clear? Yes. So the total wages for the month were 13,000. If I see here also, 3,000 plus 3,600 plus 3,900 plus 2,500. That was the total wages. So if you total the wages, 13,000 is the total. So the gross wages of all the employees, the gross wages is 13,000. That exactly is mentioned here. So gross wages is 13,000. Employer contribution 8% on 13,000. Add employee contribution 8%. So this is the total PF contribution that will be deposited by the employer to the statutory body. Clear? ESI contribution 5% for employer and 4% for employee. So total wages, again, it has to be calculated on total wages. So total wages of all the 4 employees is 13,000. 5% on 13,000, that is the employer, and 4% on 13,000, that is the employee. These rates are given in the question. All right, you don't have to assume it. So this is the total ESI contribution required to be deposited. This is the total provident fund contribution. So 8% on 13, 8% on 13, because provident fund contribution is equal for employer and employee. It's given in the question, it's equal. All right. So 2080 will be deposited. ESI 1170 will be deposited. So I hope you have understood this. All right. Next part is the total labor cost. Now, the total labor cost, you have to add everything. All right. The deduction you have to make only when you calculate the earnings. But when you're calculating the labor cost, you have to add everything. The total wages, employer contribution, total cost to the employer. You don't have to add the employee here. Employee contribution is from his own salary. Employer is contributing over and above the salary he's giving to the employee. I'm repeating, employer contribution of PF and ESI is over and above. It's extra, whatever they are paying as salary. So it's an additional cost to the employer. Clear? That's why we added. So total wages plus PF contribution employer plus ESI contribution employer. So this is the total labor cost to the employer. Clear? So this is the total labor cost to the employer. We always add the employer's contribution. I hope you've understood this. So now they're asking the total cost for the month. They have given us the material. They have given us the overheads are charged equal to labor. So material is 20,000. Labor we have just calculated 14. So material is 20,000. Labor, we have just calculated the labor cost, 14,690. Overheads, they are saying, is equal to labor cost. So whatever is the labor cost, equal amount you have to charge for overhead also. That means, so the equal for overheads also. So this will be the total cost for October month. You just add them. So total cost for October month. So this is a good comprehensive question where you have the earnings also, you have the labor cost also, you have the PF contribution also, you have the ESI contribution also. So that is all for this session. If you just have to have the final look of this question. So we have calculated the earnings, provident fund contribution, ESI, the total labor cost, and the total cost for the month. Clear? So this is the provident fund. This is the ESI we have to deposit. This is the total labor cost we have calculated. And this is the total cost we have calculated. Material is given in the question. Labor we have just calculated. Overheads is equal to labor. So this, whatever comes here will be the total cost. So any questions? Student, we don't have to see the income tax implication of the, PF contribution more than 20%, 12%. This is part of income tax. So we will concentrate on whatever percentage is given in the cost accounting. All right. So we'll focus on the cost concepts here. Will not go into the income tax concepts and income tax provisions. You will learn it in your income tax sessions. So, okay. So I'm glad, Dinesh, you have understood. And that's all for today's session. I hope you have understood the implications of overtime and idle time. In the next session, we'll be covering the wage incentive plans in detail. So what all we have basically included today was the basics of the labor cost. What are all the aspects of labor cost control? What are the role of different departments for labor cost control? What is the accounting and the treatment of how we find the earnings of workers, how we find the labor cost, how we treat the normal idle time, how we treat the abnormal idle time, how we treat the overtime, and how we actually include it in the different departments, and what all we take to profit or loss account. So that is all for today's session. I hope you've understood the concepts. We'll be sharing the material with you. So thank you, students. Thanks a lot. Happy studying.